Take a network break. I'm Drew Connery Murray.
I'm Jonna Johnson.
Help yourself to a virtual donut and a cold iced coffee as we dive into this week's swimming pool of tech news. We'll talk about a new Broadcom Tomahawk ASIC, NetBox raising a tidy Series B round, Nvidia getting the green light to sell GPUs to China, TSMC results, and more. We're sponsored today by Megaport. Whether you need to connect cloud to cloud, data center to cloud, or site to site across the globe, there's never been a better time to try Megaport. Deploy private connectivity in under 60 seconds and skip the long telco delays. Get access to over 975 data centers and over 300 cloud on-ramps worldwide, including AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, Oracle, and more. And right now, Megaport customers will get $500 in service credit and a free Megaport t-shirt when they activate their first connection. But this offer is only available to the first 50 new customers, so don't miss out. Head to megaport.com/try to claim your credit and get connected today. That is megaport.com/try. Also, we have a Tech Bytes podcast sponsored by Palo Alto Networks. We're going to examine how SASE is being adopted and deployed by enterprise customers, and we'll talk about what this integration of networking and security means for the teams that need to operate the solution. We'll talk about SASE as a transformative technology for networking and security, how SD-WAN is evolving, common SASE pain points, and how Prisma SD-WAN and Prisma SASE can address current and future requirements for connectivity and security. Jonna, before we get to the red alert and the news, we had a follow-up, an FU. Someone wrote in saying that they heard on another podcast, they were talking about a newly released paper about quantum computing, where the author of the paper concludes that many or most breakthroughs are just tricks and misdirections. We'll put a link to the paper in the show notes. I looked at the paper. It was definitely over my head, so I'm like, Jonna, this is yours.
Well, happy to take it, Drew. And just to be clear, folks, it's a fun paper. Go have a look. It's got cute pictures of a dog. And I mean, you know, you can't fault cute pictures of a dog, but it is not a serious paper. First of all, it actually doesn't address quantum computing at all. It just talks about breaking Shor's algorithm, which is kind of a big deal because quantum computing is infinitely larger than just the question of a single cryptographic algorithm. It focuses really just on the whole issue of prime factorization. Secondly, and more importantly, it limits itself to the current state of quantum. And you're going, well, why is that wrong? I mean, it's fair. The problem is it defines current as 2001 and 2012 as well. That's kind of a while ago. And with the pace of change in quantum, even while it is absolutely the case that we have not yet managed to crack RSA, despite the flawed Chinese paper that came out about a year and a half ago. We're really closing in on it. Everyone's pretty confident we'll hit that very soon. And you know, this one is basically looking at the way the world was back in 2012, where you know nobody was there. So it's cute, it's clever, but file it under "it'll never fly" Orville, and the world market for computers might be around 50. It's kind of a goofy extrapolation from the rearview mirrors to have a little bit of fun and talk about, you know, some of the mathematical problems inherent in all kinds of cryptography as well as quantum. But it's not a serious paper, bottom line.
Okay.
But the photo of the dog is really cute. It's an adorable dog, and I believe his name is Scribbles.
The paper definitely had a sense of humor, like way more than any scientific paper I've ever read.
It was just, I mean, if it has a redeeming quality, it's like, hey guys, can we puncture the hype a little bit and not go so far overboard? You know, as you know, I hate to call it that, but I'm a quantum advocate. That said, I think if you are buying stock in quantum companies, you're nuts, because we are way too early to figure out like who's going to win in this game. And the chances are pretty good that, with the possible exception of IBM and maybe Microsoft, the winners have yet to have been founded. So you know, if you're out there buying stock in these new startups, that's kind of silly. You'd probably be better off going to Las Vegas. But hey, and the guy is making the guys, I should say, there's two authors, are making a good point. So on that front. So it is whimsical. It's fun. It's got a cute picture of a dog. It says absolutely nothing interesting about actual quantum computing or the state of quantum computing.
Okay, and just to be clear, the paper, it seems like maybe this is just a preprint because it didn't say it was coming from any particular journal, but it looks like it was released in March 2025, so it is a recent paper, but you say it's basing some of its
references are back to state of quantum in 2012. That's the most recent.
Okay.
So it's basically saying, I can get my dog to bark. When my dog barks, he can perform as well in prime factorization as current computers in 2012.
Current quantum computers in 2012. Okay, yeah. That is 13 years
Current
ago.
quantum computers in 2012. Okay. So, yeah.
All right. Well, we'll have the link in the show notes if you're curious and you want to go check it out for yourself.
See a cute picture of a dog.
There's never no reason to see a cute picture of a dog.
Exactly. I am a big dog fan. Okay, that said, I'm going to go ahead and jump into this week's Red Alert. Riverbed SteelCentral has a SQL injection gateway to complete compromise. 977 new CVEs created in the week ending July 16th, and another 2,567 were updated. Of them, 448 were critical, scoring 9 or higher. 22 scored 10 out of 10. Our pick for Red Alert is CVE 2025-34112 for Riverbed SteelCentral NetProfiler and NetExpress virtual appliances. In version 10.8.7, they are vulnerable to a SQL injection attack that can roll into a command injection and a privilege escalation attack. Fun, fun. Remote unauthenticated users can get root access via SSH ultimately. These are older versions of the appliance, so hopefully if you've been keeping up on your updates, it's not going to affect you. But it's a wake-up call that if you haven't, get current on code and resolve this and a slew of other security problems as quickly as possible.
You know, I'm dating myself here, but I feel like Casey Kasem or something like, here's our weekly pick for this week's CVE. It's got a great beat. You can really dance to it.
Man, I miss Casey Kasem.
Dating ourselves, yes. There's something called Radio Kids.
Will, right? And nobody else will. That's why we date ourselves, right?
Exactly.
Okay, sorry, stupid joke. Moving on to more security news before we go into the straight networking news. Cloudflare's DNS misconfiguration results in a massive outage. Most of you know this already, but on July 14th, starting at 21:52 UTC, DNS name resolution requests to Cloudflare's 1.1.1.1 resolver service were all routed to a single location, a test location for forthcoming data localization services, which was offline. 9 minutes later, Cloudflare became aware of the problem and announced it to the public. Many of its own services were affected. The root was an incorrect configuration change pushed into production back in June, but laying dormant until an update on July 14th forced a refresh of the configuration globally and put that dormant misconfiguration into effect. It rerouted resolution of BGP prefixes to that non-production offline service. 18 minutes after the problems began, Cloudflare reverted the misconfiguration and began re-advertising the misdirected BGP fixes, and it took a little over an hour to get everything fixed because that's how BGP works.
Yep.
The incident affected multiple IP ranges, including 1.1.1.1, that's the main public DNS resolver, 1.0.0.1, secondary DNS resolver, as well as the main and secondary IPv6 DNS resolvers and multiple IP ranges that support routing within Cloudflare. Beyond the misconfiguration itself, Cloudflare blames the severity and scope of the outage on its continued use of a legacy configuration management system. The current system forces them to roll out changes comprehensively rather than doing a progressive rollout, which would have allowed them to detect the problem before most users were affected, which explains why companies that develop configuration management are constantly innovating and getting better, because that is indeed a flaw.
Yeah. Yeah, I felt like I sensed that there was a problem because on the 16th, I remember checking a couple of popular sites and I got like error messages or it was really slow. And I was like, I wonder if Cloudflare's having a cold today because they are like, in some ways, like such a linchpin now that if they screw up, it screws up everything else. And that's not a great way to run the internet.
It's not, and it reminds me of that XKCD cartoon about, this giant infrastructure depending ultimately on some guy in Arkansas who is updating his code pro bono.
Right.
It's funny, as I was reporting on this, I was thinking to myself, I don't think 99% of the people, exclusive of the people listening to this podcast, actually have a clue what any of this means. Like, to them, it's just weird technical jargon and, scary. And I don't think they really understand how ad hoc a lot of the internet really is.
Well, not our listeners. They know.
Not our listeners. As I said, exclusive to anyone, excluding anyone who's listening to this podcast.
Yes. My wife accidentally occasionally listens to this podcast when it shows up in her feed, and she's like, I didn't get it. She's very smart, but tech is not her thing, so it's fine. All right, moving on. Broadcom has announced it's shipping the Tomahawk Ultra ASIC for Ethernet switches. Broadcom's targeting high-performance computing and AI infrastructure with Tomahawk Ultra. Broadcom says the ASIC achieves 250 nanosecond switch latency at full throughput of 51.2 terabits per second and can switch up to 77 billion packets per second. It's also implementing techniques to make Ethernet better suited for AI workloads by minimizing issues like congestion and packet loss. One technique they're employing in the ASIC is called credit-based flow control. This means the receiver can signal to a sender that it has available buffer space to receive frames or packets, and each time a data unit is sent, the sender then decrements available credits. When the credits are used up, the sender stops transmitting until more credits are available. And again, this is to minimize packet loss because in HPC and AI infrastructure, anything that delays job completion time is a bad thing. So these chips are being designed specifically for those workloads.
Drew, I don't want to play gotcha here, but do you happen to know whether that full throughput is bidirectional or unidirectional?
You did get me. I don't know.
I'm sorry, I wasn't trying
That's
to.
fine.
I was just sort of curious because it does make a difference. I'm not sure it really matters, but if anybody happens to be looking at this and has the answer, we would be curious.
Yeah, packetpushers.net/FU, which I also forgot to mention at the FU at the start of the show. But yeah, please do follow up. One other note on this, Broadcom says the Tomahawk Ultra can also reduce Ethernet overhead from 46 bytes to 10 bytes to improve network efficiency without any Ethernet loss.
Interesting. Well, we're seeing a lot of this coming out. Looks like they're doing all the right things, and it'll be fun to see where this chip ends up going.
I can imagine all the hyperscalers lining up is what I'm hoping
Yeah,
Broadcom
right?
imagines, yes.
Yes, exactly. So there we are. And that, boys and girls, explains why Broadcom is not paying very much attention to VMware. Cough, cough. Okay. Sorry, had to get that dig in there. All right. Moving on to even more purely networking news. NetBox Labs just got $35 million in Series B funding. NetBox Labs, as most of us know, is a spin-out from DNS platform NS1. It builds tools around the open-source NetBox platform for documenting and modeling networks. The company has secured $35 million in a Series B funding round. NGB Capital led the round, joining all existing investors, which include Salesforce Ventures and IBM, and adding new investors, including Sorensen Capital and Headline. This brings NetBox Labs' total funding to $55 million. In addition to offering the core modeling program, NetBox Labs also offers a network discovery tool and an audit tool for detecting configuration drift. Somebody call Cloudflare.
Yeah, really. Yeah, so NetBox is operating in this kind of nascent market of sources of truth or systems of record. It's supposed to provide a more robust and sustainable way, one, to just document your network and then build a model that represents the desired state of the network. I should note that NetBox isn't actually a network monitoring or configuration management tool, but it can populate third-party monitoring and config management tools and support network automation initiatives. It's competing with the likes of Nautobot, InfraHub, Glueware, and Itential, which are also network automation platforms. NetBox is operating in an open source freemium model, so you can use the free open source version or get a paid version that offers more features and tech support and so on. So John, I've been trying to come up with kind of a mental model for NetBox and other like source of truth products. And right now I'm sort of thinking about it like a bookkeeper or accountant. Like the bookkeeper isn't sending the payments or the depositing the checks, but it is keeping a record of those transactions. So like if I want to do a configuration change, I'm not necessarily using NetBox for that, but it is the place where I'd go to look at the existing configs and maybe update those records when some other automation tool has made those config changes. I don't know if that's a useful or accurate mental model. So again, packetpushers.net/FU if there's a better way I should be thinking about this.
Yeah, I think that's actually a great model because the source of truth problem is a much, much bigger problem than folks realize because you can't do anything unless you know what's actually there.
Yeah.
And you have to have a trusted source of truth. So I think that's the very basic component to doing any kind of management going forward, and especially configuration management.
Yeah, this is also an opportunity for the NetBox folks to maybe reach out to Cloudflare and be like, "Hey, have you checked this out?"
You wanted to move to a modern configuration management tool? Let us assist.
That's right.
Yes,
The commercial practically writes itself.
it really does. Yeah, and I think it's a good indication. Two things struck me about this. I think it's a good indication that the market realizes the value of this kind of tool. The other thing is, this is a nice, healthy, medium grade investment. So it's not, a couple million to get launched because they are far beyond launched,
Well
but it's
beyond.
also not some sort of insane, here's 200 million, because it's not hype. It's actually a tool that people will actually buy to solve real problems, which is, it's kind of a 35, $50 million problem. It's not, it's not the next new AI, whatever, 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 and the hope is it's some sort of crazy Ponzi scheme. It's like, no,
Right.
really,
No,
you're going
I,
to use this to solve problems.
I think that's a great point that it is not like, just trying to boost the valuation of this company to make it a quote unquote unicorn or whatever.
Thank you.
And hype
Those
it
are the
up.
words
Yeah.
I wanted. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. It is a substantial, but in some ways modest investment. That's great. I think it is a good sign. Maybe it's going to stir other investors to get in on other companies that are in this space to help this market grow. Although I think at this point, like network source of truth or system as record is still really a tiny segment of the network management market total. But
But I do think, and I just want to hammer on this point one more time because
yeah,
it does tie into the Cloudflare issue. I do think it illuminates the fact that there is a crying need for investment in internet infrastructure, and I use
yes,
that very broadly. The stuff that gets the packets to go from A to B. And in the past maybe decade or so, we've gotten really defocused on that and focused on whizzy new, disruptive blah blah woof woof stuff. And we're back to realizing that if it's great to have all this blah blah woof woof stuff, but if you can't get to that LLM that's operating in the cloud because the internet broke down, you have a problem. And so I think this is actually incredibly important.
yeah, bad BGP config lurking in
Right.
your system that you didn't know about and suddenly emerges. That's a problem, as we've seen. All
Yeah.
right, moving on. Nvidia says it will soon be able to sell its H20 AI GPUs to China. Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang visited U.S. President Trump on July 10th, and in a follow-up press release, Nvidia stated, quote, NVIDIA is filing applications to sell the NVIDIA H20 GPU again. The U.S. government has assured NVIDIA that licenses will be granted, and NVIDIA hopes to start delivery soon. I heard you laugh there. Just some context.
Sorry, the U.S. government assuring anyone of anything at this point is a little hard to believe, given its reversals on practically everything from immigration to tariffs. So yeah, this week I guess it's okay.
So the context is that back in April, the U.S. Commerce Department put export restrictions on the H20 and on AI chips from Nvidia and others. So I guess Jensen Huang made a trip to Washington and had a conversation. Nvidia said it would have to take a $5.5 billion write-off because of those restrictions. So definitely worth a trip to Washington to see if you can have a conversation. At the moment, it seems like he's been successful in talking his way out of those restrictions. But as you mentioned, this is not an administration known for its constancy, so we will see what happens.
We will.
All right, a quick break to tell you about our sponsor, Megaport. Do you need to link AWS to Azure, connect data centers, or build out a global WAN without the headache of telco contracts and long provisioning times? Then you should check out Megaport. Whether it's cloud to cloud, data center to cloud, or site to site across the globe, you can deploy private connectivity in under 60 seconds through Megaport's smart and simple platform. Scale on demand across over 975 plus data centers and over 300 plus cloud on-ramps with no long-term commitments and no waiting months for circuits. There's never been a better time to try Megaport. Right now, the first 50 customers to activate their first Megaport connection will get $500 in service credits to kickstart their network, plus a free Megaport t-shirt, because your network shouldn't be the only thing looking sharp. Head over to megaport.com/try to claim your credit before it's gone. That's megaport.com/try. And we thank Megaport for being a sponsor.
Okay. And moving into more networking and AI news, F5 is unifying its AI assistants and adding iRules generation. F5 has released a new AI assistant that brings together the previously separate assistants associated with its Nginx One platform and its distributed cloud services platform. The new unified AI assistant leverages F5's AI data fabric to connect its proprietary purpose-built AI models for providing domain-specific expertise, precise guidance, and actionable insights based on operational data, or so it says. By unifying these separate agents, F5 sets it wants to increase the power of AI assistants and reduce complexity for users, and allowing them to make better decisions faster. Another major change, the new unified AI assistant will be able to not just explain big IP iRules, but also generate and optimize them. Kind of a big deal.
Yep.
F5 says that the assistant simplifies the most complex aspects of iRules management and improves accuracy. Okay, then.
I mean, great if it works because, load balancing can get pretty complex pretty quickly. And if you're not an iRules expert, this tool seems like it could be helpful again, assuming it works. I don't know why they needed to bring two assistants together, but I'm getting a sense that we're going to start hearing about unified agents. It's not two agents or three agents anymore. It's one super agent coming down the pike.
Exactly. I mean, this seems to me kind of a common sense housekeeping move. I'm not sure it's worthy of an announcement, but okay, everybody knows it now. Yay.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you actually can create an AI tool that you have trained on your documentation and tech support and all that, and it is actually good at helping folks look at their rules, be it these iRules, if you're talking about ACLs, firewall rules, whatever, that's a good thing. Again, caveat, assuming it works. We talked about quantum earlier. We've got a quantum computing story. The country of Denmark has tapped Atom Computing and Microsoft to build a quantum computer that operates with 50 logical qubits. If successful, it will be the most powerful commercially available quantum computer in the world. Denmark's Export and Investment Fund has partnered with the Novo Nordisk Foundation, that's a nonprofit that controls the pharma giant Novo Nordisk, to pony up 80 million euros for a quantum initiative called Q North. A key goal of Q North is to finance and operate a quantum computer to be called Magne, and Magne is the son of Thor in Norse mythology, so great, nice, nerdy reference there. Reuters is reporting the construction is expected to begin this fall and the computer slated to be in operation by the end of 2026. The goal is to tackle areas including drug development and material science. Reuters also quotes a Microsoft saying that 50 logical qubits is where you hit quantum advantage. So, John, there's a lot of intention and forecasting here. We'll have to see how it plays out. But my overall take is 80 million seems like a pretty modest hedge if you're a giant pharma company and a national investment fund on technology. And if we assume that quantum computing does have potential, then that 80 million is going to look pretty smart, particularly if Denmark develops an equivalent to ASML in the Netherlands, which essentially is the linchpin to modern chip design and construction these days.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two things to take away from this. First thing is this is just a run-of-the-mill Mark 1 Mod 0 move in Europe in quantum investment. Mm-hmm. If you go and look at the overview of quantum investment in Europe, it's enormous. We have a quantum technology area benchmark paper where we routinely survey what's going on in Europe and as well as the US and Asia. And it's just tremendous how much government investment, private investment, and government-private partnerships are going into quantum. So this is good news, not a surprise. Atom is kind of a big deal. Obviously, we all know Microsoft is a big deal, so that's all fantastic. I think the big difference here, if you happen to be a U.S. listener, is over in Europe and in Asia, they are plowing enormous amounts of investment from the governments into quantum. Here in the US, the take is pretty much, let's just let the private market deal with that, which means unless you have a problem that your product can solve, you don't really have much investment. So I expect to see Asia and Europe really kind of break away from the US and take the lead in quantum computing for this reason, because they're certainly in Europe, they've got a wonderful mix of private public investment. And in Asia, it's largely government, and in the U.S. it's largely private. So I think Europe probably has the winning recipe here. The other thing I would just say is I'm not sure who the Microsoft source was that Reuters quoted, but the statement 50 logical qubits is where you hit quantum advantage is a false statement without broader context. There's no such thing as quantum advantage outside of a use case. Quantum advantage actually refers to specific use cases. It doesn't matter how many qubits you actually have to have enough qubits to perform the computations. But the class of use cases where quantum delivers an advantage is called quantum advantage. So that is either misquoted or they left out a piece, or the source doesn't know what he's talking about, and I'm going to go with misquote. Speaking of which, I'm going to put in a quick plug. Here at Nemertes, we do a Nemertes Live talk on various things, and we have Juan Moreno, who is the principal technology evangelist at Amazon Web Services, who's going to be talking next month about Tales from the Quantum Crypto. So if you have questions about that, I think the cool thing is that Juan is not as pro quantum as I am. He's a little bit more measured in his take, so it'll be very interesting to hear from him on all of the things.
Is that a public thing people can see?
No, but they can get invitations. If you're listening to this podcast, just reach out and tap me. I'll tell you how down at the bottom and down at the end of this, and we'll get you in.
Okay. Yeah, just to sort of round out that point, I do think investment like this is good because it sort of like builds on itself. It attracts additional investment, attracts research talent, it attracts engineering talent. And if, you could say that Europe may have missed out on the AI boom. It seems like they don't want that to happen on quantum, assuming, again, quantum becomes a thing. And I will say, to your other point, like not trying to be too political, but the current U.S. administration is just like vehemently anti-science and anti-basic research with all the funding cuts to universities and so on. That is just really bad for us as a nation long term.
I agree with that statement, but I also think it doesn't entirely apply because the thing I want people to understand is there has been ongoing investment in quantum for the past couple decades. It's been getting more intense in the past decade, and the U.S. has, even under previous administrations, really largely let that be private. I mean,
Sure.
Not exclusively, but that's just the U.S. model. It's like, hey, we've got Silicon Valley. Why do we need the government to tell us what to do? Never mind the fact that the government actually invented the internet, but that's okay.
That is a story.
So really, this is as much as I agree with your statement. I think it's a terrible idea to shortchange science and engineering by not funding. It's really a longer duration problem. And I would say, the other point I want to make is that Europe has been investing heavily in this kind of stuff for at least the past decade is a good way to look at it. So this isn't new. It's just another drumbeat in a very loud and long concert.
All right, links in the show notes if you want to check it out, and we will move on.
Okay, last but not least, speaking of Europe, EXA Infrastructure is adding a new London to EU set of fiber routes. On July 14th, EXA Infrastructure, a dedicated digital infrastructure provider for the UK and EU, has added a new 1,200-kilometer fiber route connecting London to Brussels, Amsterdam, and Frankfurt. It begins with a 115-kilometer ultra-low-loss subsea cable running under the North Sea, connecting Margate in the UK to Ostend, Belgium in the EU. From there, interesting, we're going to switch into miles. 1,085 miles of low-loss fiber connects Ostend to Brussels, Amsterdam, and Frankfurt. This new cable under the North Sea is actually the first in 25 years. EXA, which runs 155,000 kilometers of fiber in a network touching 37 countries and including 6 transatlantic links, says this complex and challenging build will significantly enhance the EU's digital infrastructure. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but I will say it makes a lot of sense to pay attention to the fiber infrastructure that's going into Europe, because quite a lot of folks don't realize, especially if they come from places like Australia or the US, don't really understand how tight the European topography is. So you're thinking, oh, gee, we can't put a data center in one country and access it from another country because latency is going to kill us. Actually, you can in Europe because the countries aren't very far apart.
Right.
And so this becomes really useful if you are looking to situate a data center somewhere and for whatever reason can't. Several months back, we talked about the fact that if you can't put your data center in Ireland because you're going to run out of energy, you should also consider Iceland, which is basically on top of Ireland from a latency perspective and has almost unlimited energy thanks to its geothermal environment.
Yeah. I'm really surprised this is the first new cable under the North Sea in 25 years. I realize the North Sea is a difficult environment to operate in, but that surprised me, that fact.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
All right, our final story for the day. Chipmaker TSMC announced their second quarter financial results. The company had revenues of $933.7 billion in new Taiwanese dollars, which comes out to about 30 billion US. That's an almost 45% increase in US currency over the last year. That's also an 18% jump from the previous quarter. Profits were up 61% year over year. TSMC says revenues were driven by 7 nanometer and more advanced wafers. 3 nanometer was almost a quarter of revenues, and 5 nanometer was 36%. For the third quarter coming up, TSMC is expecting a slight uptick in revenue compared to this quarter's results. To me, that's a sign that AI and HPC demand is strong, at least for the next 3 months. As we reported in a previous story, with Nvidia now apparently cleared to sell advanced GPUs to China, that's also good news for TSMC, which is a prime supplier to Nvidia. There are potential headwinds for the upcoming quarters. There's the threat of tariffs, of course. At present, Taiwan's being threatened with a 32% tariff, though, as we know how that goes, trade talks are ongoing. And semiconductors as a product category may also have U.S. tariffs levied against them, though, again, who really knows? My overall takeaway is AI boom is driving these results, but you also have to wonder maybe if there's some stockpiling going on in these last couple of quarters with companies ordering more than they need in anticipation of tariffs, and if so, is that stockpiling goosing these results? I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I think that's an excellent point, and people should pay close attention to it. And also, heads up that Intel is reporting its financial results next week, so we'll hear from them, and we'll update you then.
Yeah, and in the meantime, champagne popping over at TSMC.
Yeah, right.
All right, that wraps up the news. Stick around for our Tech Bites coming up. But John, in the meantime, where can folks get more from you, especially if they want to try to get an invite to this talk?
Yes, if you want to go hear Juan Moreno talking about Tales from the Quantum Crypto, just hit me up at nemertes.com. There's a little form there that says contact us. Fill that out and just say, hey, I want to get an invite to the Nemertes Live, and we will take care of it. So again, that's nemertes.com. Hit the contact us, and the rest will happen.
All right. I'm Drew Conrad-Murray. I'm on Blue Sky at DrewCM and blogging at packetpushers.net. Thanks to our sponsor, Megaport, and do stay tuned for our Tech Bites conversation with Palo Alto Networks. We're going to be talking about SD-WAN and SASE and how SD-WAN is evolving. That's coming right up. Today on the Tech Bites podcast, sponsored by Palo Alto Networks, we examine how SASE is being adopted and deployed by enterprise customers. And what does the integration of networking and security mean for teams that need to operate the solution? We'll talk with Palo Alto Networks about SASE as a transformative technology for networking and security, how SD-WAN is evolving, some common SASE pain points, and how Prisma SD-WAN and Prisma SASE can address current and future requirements for connectivity and security. Our guest is Mayuri Kulkarni, Director of Product Management for Prisma SD-WAN and Prisma SASE. Mayuri, welcome to the podcast. So there's a couple of ways organizations can approach SASE. There's kind of the network-led effort or the security-led effort. Can you walk us through these two approaches and how they differ?
Thanks, Drew, for having me on the podcast. So first, let me talk about the network-led SASE transformation. We typically see this led by the SD-WAN motion, where customers want to modernize their branch networks. They want to optimize their traffic for better performance, application resilience, as well as best user experience. So typically when with this simplified networking approach, when customers embark on their SASE journey, what they are trying to do is lay the foundation for the networking infrastructure and then add the security parameters and the security constructs into this SASE parlance. Now, the second transformation we see is the security-led SASE transformation. Here, it is all led by the security teams, where Zero Trust Network Access, or ZTNA, Twig, CASB, Firewall as a Service, all of these security services are offered as a cloud-delivered security, mostly for mobile users to application connectivity. So it starts with mobile users trying to access the applications, security services laid in the cloud, and also branch connectivity to different applications. But here, it can be a multi-vendor solution, or networking comes in as an added layer after all the security constructs are put in place. So in a nutshell, networking and security-led motions, both of them are in play, but the care-abouts and the key parameters where SD-WAN or SSE plays a role are different, but both are leading to the same unified policy and unified SASE construct.
Yeah, in my world of doing WAN administration, there was I would think first about connectivity because I'm a network guy at heart, right? That's the thing that matters to me the most. I want to connect people in the most efficient way possible, the fastest way possible, of course, working within those budget constraints. And SD-WAN as a technology was great for that. Now, as we've evolved into SASE to get the security stuff, I would do some security work too, right? I was a network guy first with security responsibilities. But then there'd be those opportunities to work with the security team because they had these things that they wanted to deliver, these services they wanted to deliver. And isn't it interesting how SASE has gotten to this place where both of those teams end up at the same place, at the same result?
That is true. And what the interesting trend we are seeing is a lot of the times it's a CISO driven or a CIO driven transformation where they want both the networking teams and the security teams to come together and solve for the business needs, solve for connectivity, solve for security, user to application, whether they are mobile users, branch users, app to app communication, and security. So, all of these are now interestingly converging into a single platform based solution with SASE.
Yep.
Yeah, so you've got the full integrated SASE solution that's Prisma Access, Prisma SD-WAN. You've got a Prisma Access agent, a Prisma Access browser. How does all that come together in this solution?
Yeah, so let me start by saying that this is really an exciting time for Prisma SD-WAN and Prisma SASE because Gartner recently released the 2025 Magic Quadrant for SASE platforms. And Palo Alto Networks emerged as the leader for the third consecutive year with the highest ranking in the ability to execute. So, this in turn talks about our pioneering effort and the ability to execute in this market. To your point, Drew, we have a platformization approach, and we started on this journey ahead of the industry, wherein we brought together Prisma SD-WAN, Prisma Access, and then we added Prisma Access browser and the Prisma Access agent to encompass all the use cases around security, connectivity, whether it is branch to application or mobile user to application. We also started with managed devices, unmanaged devices, browsers. And now all of this is, if you think about it, there's a digital experience or an embedded ADEM into all of these different components so that not only do we provide security and connectivity, we also provide best user experience. So a really good example of a customer using our solution for a network-led SASE transformation is that of Racetrack. So Racetrack started on their SD-WAN journey by bringing up more than 800 sites across the entire globe. They were able to achieve 99.99% of payment system uptime, 99% reduction in their trouble tickets after they deployed Prisma SD-WAN. Now, building on this success, they did see the value of a unified platform, and now they are on their way to enforcing policies, and they are on their way to onboarding with Prisma Access for a unified SASE solution.
So, Mayur, you said something interesting there about ADEM, which is about digital experience monitoring or digital experience management. Can you talk about what that is and how it's folded into this platform?
ADEM, or Autonomous Digital Experience Management. When I say it is embedded, the ADEM agent is running into each and every component of our SASE platform. So there's an ADEM agent running on the Prisma Access browser. There's an agent or a component running on our Prisma Access agent. Then there is an ADEM agent running on our SD-WAN ION devices. So we get the end-to-end perspective and the end-to-end user experience across all of these different layers of the network. And our Strata Cloud Manager, which is the centralized management portal, provides the end-to-end visibility across all of these different layers of the network. And not only that, we are adding more AI-powered capabilities into the ADEM, so we can actually have more predictive analytics. We can actually do a whole lot of correlation, incident correlation, root cause analysis, whether a user is trying to access an application, a browser is trying to access a specific application. And now we are also going into the space of SD-WAN devices acting as IoT sensors. So we can actually also identify that there are devices within your branch network which are trying to access these applications. So it comes together, all of these different components come together with the best user experience provided through this integrated ADEM.
All right, Mira, we've been talking about SASE, but it all started with SD-WAN. And back in the day, SD-WAN was like the thing. Everybody was really excited about it. It was a big, big market. It had everybody's attention. But it does feel like SD-WAN's kind of disappeared behind SASE as a term. And SD-WAN's like, just a thing. It's part of it, whatever. But is SD-WAN as a technology still exciting? Is it still evolving?
You make a very interesting point, Ethan. So I'm going to start off by quoting one of Gartner's recent comments around SD-WAN, wherein they say that 70% of the net new SD-WAN deployments by 2028 are going to be led by a SASE-led motion. Now, having said that, SD-WAN as a technology has been around for more than a decade. But I think overall, it is transformed from a disruptive alternative for MPLS technologies to a strategic building block for secure and cloud-delivered networking and for SASE. Let me elaborate a bit more on what kind of trends we are seeing in the market, right? So as I said, convergence between security and networking, convergence of SD-WAN into SASE, platform consolidation. So we do see customers and buyers increasingly wanting to combine SD-WAN, SSE, adjacent technologies like multi-cloud networking or WAN LAN features, managing all of those through a platform approach. We do see AI-powered automation. So a lot of SD-WAN solutions are innovating on embedded AI for automation of the network and for network efficiency. And here, all the correlation, the automated configuration, proactive remediation, incident detection, and then AI-powered troubleshooting. These are some of the innovations happening right in the SD-WAN solutions as a technology. Right? And we are also seeing a lot of multi-cloud networking technologies and problems being solved by SD-WAN. So not just a user to app, but app to app or cloud to cloud connectivity, all of that are getting embedded into the SD-WAN fabric now. And of course, digital experience monitoring and advanced visibility. I think SD-WAN devices sit at a very strategic point within your network because they can see the entire, fabric of the WAN fabric. They can see your branch networks, right? They can see what users are doing in the branch, what kind of devices are there in the branch with the proliferation of IoT devices, edge AI capabilities. So it is at a vantage point at this point of time where it can not only get the entire visibility, but it plays a critical role in enablement of SASE.
Well, another point you made there was about combining platforms, the platform consolidation. Now, back in the day, it was you buy point solutions. You buy a tool that does this and then another tool that does this other thing. And then, we got this other problem. Here's a startup that just invented a new tool for that. And the tool sprawl gets to be unmanageable, particularly when you can't integrate the outputs of those tools. And so that combined platform feature is interesting, especially in the context of look at where your SD-WAN box is sitting on the edge of the network and the conversations it gets to see, the conversations that it's privy to and what it can analyze. It is well positioned to do that and to be that combined platform.
For sure. And we do see customers who start off with point solutions running into these issues. These are some of the pain points we see customers experiencing if they are using point solutions, where they spend a whole lot of time in addressing the visibility gaps with inconsistent policies and overall a difficult management experience from their entire tool set, management of tool set point of view.
So we've been talking about SASE as, an integration of networking and security. And that's great, but someone said to me recently that it's hard to get networking and security teams to work well together because networking wants to deliver the packet, security wants to drop it. And that's, yes, an oversimplification, but what are the tensions or the pain points that can arise when you're trying to integrate networking and security, particularly, I think, from an operational perspective?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'll come back to one of the statements which I made before, right? The first pain point we see customers encountering is around stitching together different point solutions. They try to solve the networking problems with a certain solution, but then stitching the information that a networking tool provides you with the information that, let's say, a security policy is providing you with another vendor, stitching together all of that information in a single visibility console is one of the pain points we see customers encountering.
So networking might be looking at one set of interfaces or one set of GUIs, and security is looking at another set, and neither of the two shall meet, kind of a thing.
Yes, and just a simple example, right? Like we do flow captures, and as networking people, we, day in and day out look at TCP dumps and packet captures. Now, if that same packet is going from an SD-WAN network into an SSE cloud, right, into an SSE security service, if there's a security policy which is dropping that flow, just imagine how long it'll take for somebody to figure out just through the packet capture and let's say through networking tools to figure out that there's a security policy which is actually dropping the packets of this flow versus a single unified platform which provides that end-to-end visibility, that there's a flow which started from a branch network, it went through these SD-WAN devices, it got redirected to a SASE node, and there's a security policy which is dropping this. It makes life so much easy.
Yeah, that visibility is shared across both teams, so you get that benefit of all eyes on sort of a common view.
Exactly. The other pain point we see is, latency. Like customers feel that if I have to route traffic from certain branches to certain security POPs, what happens to my latency? Will my applications and will my user experience be different? And this is where functionalities like app acceleration, which we have integrated into our SASE platform, come into play. So we do ensure that as the security processing is happening, the latency problem is solved, not just within the network world, but also in the application world. So we do a whole lot of, application performance optimization ingrained as part of the SASE solution.
Is that application performance optimization happening on the networking side or within the security stack that you've built out that all of this traffic has to run through?
Yeah, so we have a very interesting approach. We started supporting the application acceleration with Prisma SD-WAN standalone, and we do have support for it through SASE, right, through our POP location. So customers have a choice. If they're starting off with an SD-WAN as part of their SASE journey, they do have a choice of doing application acceleration at a network layer or at an application layer. The packets are still going through our application acceleration nodes, which are sitting at the POP location, but it is a turnkey feature for customers. So what I mean by that is customers do not need a head-end solution like a typical WAN optimization solution, right? They do not need a head-end device. We optimize for SaaS applications directly, which is a direct internet application from the branch into the internet.
Yeah, that's interesting because I am thinking to back in those old days of WAN acceleration, you kind of needed a device at each end, and that's more expensive, but you're saying this is kind of built into the solution.
It is. And that is solving for a whole lot of network application latency problems that we see customers running into.
So, looking ahead, looking over the horizon at future threats, evolving network demands, what's Palo Alto Networks doing or thinking about to make sure that Prisma SASE can kind of be there or meet these requirements as they emerge?
Yeah, it's an excellent question, and I think it gets to the heart of our strategy because as we are seeing network threats are evolving, security is getting more and more complicated with the advent of AI and agent-to-agent communication itself, right? So I'm going to look at it first from a security-led perspective. And of course, as Palo Alto Networks, we have security embedded at all stages of the network, all stages of the user experience and application experience. Our philosophy here is that of proactive defense rather than reactive defense. And so by embedding precision AI into all our core platforms, including the Prisma Airs platform, which we recently launched, to provide a secure access for all kinds of AI ecosystems for agent-to-agent communication, protecting the agents and protecting the Gen AI models themselves. These are some of the security innovations that we are looking at, right? And we do see a whole lot of use cases evolve around future proofing for this generation of AI application to application communication.
Yeah, it seems like that is a rich ground for potential security issues when you're thinking about authorization, authentication, access to sensitive resources with all these agents running around doing things, not to mention wanting to make sure the network performance is there.
Absolutely. And we are at the forefront of all of these innovations. And we do see the market evolving with more and more use cases around DLP and DSPM, all the use cases around these security parlance. I'll talk about also how work is changing. Now, we do see that with all the Gen AI tools that are being accessed through the browser is also being exposed to security vulnerabilities. Your data is being exposed to security vulnerabilities. So the Prisma Access browser is very well positioned to secure all the pathways for a browser accessing different kinds of applications. And not only your traditional applications, but the Gen AI apps as well. And on the networking side, we believe that, of course, flexibility, connectivity, resilience, and future proofing of the network for the emerging use cases around IoT security, edge AI use cases, multi-cloud networking, all of that through a distributed policy enforcement model is where we see the industry going.
So to wrap up, it seems like the big takeaway here is this integration of the networking and security and what Palo Alto Networks is able to do here.
That is correct. We believe that both networking and security are poised for a deeply integrated solution through SASE. Again, I'm going to make a point. It will be through a unified management console with entire end-to-end visibility and, of course, AI-powered troubleshooting and an AI-powered platform.
Well, thank you, Mayuri, for joining us, and thanks to Palo Alto Networks for being a sponsor. If this conversation has piqued your interest, you can go to paloaltonetworks.com/SASE/SD-WAN and paloaltonetworks.com/SASE to get more information. And as always, thank you for listening. Just a reminder that if you enjoyed this episode, there are many more fine free technical podcasts and our community blog and our community Slack group. It's all at packetpushers.net. You can follow us on LinkedIn, hear us on Spotify, and rate us on Apple Podcasts. Last but not least, remember that too much networking would never be enough.